Next up, we got Nicole, Lucca.
Not great. I'm not this tall. Hi, everyone. I can't see any of you. So when they told us we could pretty much wear whatever we want to this. So I think that pretty much sets up my aesthetic well that I chose a dress that looks like I'm the secretary of the Super Mario Brothers. So that's sums me up. I actually went as Luigi for Halloween. My sister was Mario. Our dad is an Italian plumber, so we wanted to keep it like in the fam for this, for this Halloween. And on that Halloween, I got an allergic reaction for the first time in 5 years. And you know, like when your teachers scold you and they're like, make sure you check your candy because for like razors and things you're allergic to. Yeah, I've gotten this speech for like 13 years. It's like, yeah, whatever. And it was fine until I was in like a dark basement in Austin at a party, not by myself. Like a little weird, and I ate what I thought was the Three Musketeers and ended up being a Snickers, and I just like my mouth filled with death, and I was just like going into anaphylactic shock, like in the middle of this like bumping like DJ set. So my first reaction is to gargle a beer. That doesn't work. I'm like, maybe it'll cleanse it. No. So I next step, I ask a very nice fighter pilot who owned the house and he like drunkenly pulls up Apple Maps and like shows me where the nearest CVS is. So me and my sister start running down the street as my throat is closing, and I forgot that like we were in full mustaches and full, and like I don't know. I kept like rubbing my face. Do people who have mustaches forget that they have them sometimes? And they're like, what's this on my face? It's like, I've never experienced that issue before until that day. So we're running down the street and people are rolling down their windows and they're like, Mario, where's Yoshi? And I'm like, I'm dying. We got to the CVS and I run in and I'm like, Benadryl, I need Benadryl. And the guy is like taking his sweet time, like scanning the Advils and cigarettes on the bottom. I could see the box and I'm like, give it to me. And he goes, no. There's an $8 minimum for debit cards. And I immediately, because I was just so just scrambled, I couldn't think of like things that added to $7, so I could just buy it and leave. So I get a bag of large luxury grapes, and then me and my sister become the people at the party that just start handing people washed grapes with their Jell-O shots, which was, I feel like, a nice identity, bringing some health into the party scene. Very important. So when I'm not doing this, I am a barista. I love feeding into that writer-barista stereotype. I feel like if you acknowledge stereotypes, it makes it a little better. But really, I just love free croissants. So we get some customers that are just very stupid, honestly. One time my manager came up, we were closed, and he comes up and he's holding a pair of moccasins, and I'm like, those aren't yours, they're 30 and not a 12-year-old girl. And he's like, no, I found these in the dining room under the table, resting there. So that means that somebody had taken their shoes off to sit, which is rude, anyway. And walked out of the cafe across the hardwood floor, walked onto the pavement, didn't notice that they weren't wearing shoes or didn't care, and they were just like, I'll leave them for 3 hours. So that's the IQ of the people that I'm dealing with, to give you a perspective. Shoes re-entered my life a week later in work. What a setup. And there was a really long line, and I looked at, and one of the faces I saw was a regular homeless guy that comes in. He kind of looks like Gilderoy Lockhart if he wore a lot of flannels. He's pretty friendly, but he'll always start a conversation, and we were really busy, so I look at him and I smile, and I'm like, can I take whoever is next in line? And he puts a brand new pair of tan leather cowboy boots onto the counter in front of my face and yells, if these fit any of you, you can have them. And I was just so floored by this gift, and I'm like, where did you get these new beautiful cowboy boots, and why are you just specifically giving them to me? So I just look really frantically, and I'm like, no thank you, and I go to the next person. And later when I was telling my boss about it, he's like, oh, did you see that guy that I kicked out? And I'm like, yeah, the one with the shoes. He's like, no. The one behind him, the businessman, tried to steal our tip jar. So I think I just witnessed the pilot of a sitcom about a businessman and a homeless person trying to defy like the odds of society. They're like, we're gonna team up and we're gonna steal from these baristas. So, I mean, I guess I gotta appreciate good writing. There's this one old lady who comes in and I hate her and I won't wait on her. And I feel like I'm pretty justified. She just to give you an image, she wears only khaki pantsuits that zip up past her belly button, and her face looks like a wilted jack-o'-lantern. Yeah. So I hate her because one time I was going into the bathroom before my break, and she exited the stall and she looked in my eyes with the most wicked, sinister expression, and I just knew her face just said, whatever is in there, I'm glad that it's your job to clean it up. And so I open the door, I push it open, and there's just pee all over the floor. Just not even she did not even try to aim. And I'm like, I don't know, this lady's 80-something. She's probably used the bathroom 500,000 times in her life. She probably has a good gauge of being able, and she was in pants. So that means she must have just literally been not today, too cold, not comfortable. I'm gonna pee on this floor. It's my territory now, bitch. Make me another cappuccino. And then she stayed in the cafe for the next 2 hours just looking over at me and smoking and sipping her little espresso, so I won't wait on her anymore. I feel like as a kid you have to have a lot of really awkward conversations. One of those is when your parents explain to you what sex is. My mom did that with a cartoon book about birds, because nothing makes that conversation less awkward, cartoons, and just my mom telling me about what penises were, because I really needed to be informed in my life, I guess. And so when she was going to give me this conversation, I had no idea, and I was supposed to be doing homework, but I was playing my DS because I thought I was a slick little kid. I'm instead of learning fractions, I'm just gonna tend to my crops on Animal Crossing and fail. And she comes in, she just bestows the wisdom of life and adult relationships onto my 10-year-old brain. And I'm just kind of floored by it. And then I forget that I had been neglecting my homework, and when she got up, the blanket moved and my DS fell on the floor, and I'm like, oh, I've been caught. And she looks down and she just kind of laughs and she goes, at least it wasn't a condom. Dinner will be ready in 10. And she closes the door, and I'm like, my mom was way too willing to accept the fact that I was just pulling dick in the 5th grade. I mean, my mom really believes in me. She's always encouraged me to follow my dreams, so I think that's really important for an art student. Then when I was 16, I decided to, take control of my body as a woman and get control of birth at Planned Parenthood. What a lot of scary words in that sentence. So I went by myself, and in the waiting room when I walked in, there were these 2 guys that were leaning back in their chairs, high-fiving every couple minutes for no reason whatsoever. They owned the vibe of the room. I'm like, I don't know where you think you are, but they were rocking it. And then there was a 13-year-old boy and his mom who was crinkling a mint in her purse, and she just looked like she'd never missed a sale at Macy's in her life. We're all waiting for these open appointments, and the Planned Parenthood employees are so into it. They keep playing all these Jeopardy-style games about how not to contract hepatitis, and everyone in the waiting room is just kind of just chilling. But the employee gestures to this bucket of condoms, and he's like, "Here, these are for you. You take them, be safe. We are offering them to you free of charge." And this man comes up in the front row, and he takes the entire bucket of condoms and shakes the whole thing into his backpack as his friend is behind him clapping "That's my boy!" And I was damn, I really need someone in my life that just cheers like that after I do everything. Yeah! You did it! And I was really proud of him because I guess he was just taking extra precaution, 30 condoms for the one time a woman would touch him. Really, I'm proud of him. But so the Planned Parenthood sees that the employee sees that the bucket is empty. They kind of side-eye us and then go back, refill it. So then the 13-year-old boy comes up and he just takes handfuls, shoves them in his Gap hoodie, swaggers back. And his mom does not look up from her Sudoku. And she's just like, wow, you think you're slick? You think you're so cool? Why don't you tell everyone while you're here? And he just kind of mumbles through his braces incoherently. He's like, Mom. And she goes, wow, maybe you wouldn't need all those condoms if you weren't here to be tested for chlamydia. And I was like, that's the coolest mom ever. Like, instead, she found out that her 13-year-old kid was having unprotected sex. Instead of like freaking out and just ignoring it, she's like, no. You're gonna come with me to this doctor's office. You're gonna pee in a cup. You're gonna look at a chart and face your mistakes. And I think that's mom goals, honestly. When I was younger, I was embarrassed about a lot of things. I was always afraid my hands would be like too sweaty because like I had this image of if a boy liked me and he was just caught up in the throes of young romance, he'd like grab my hand, and if it was like sweaty, he would just throw it away and be like, "Oh, you creature," and then like throw things at me. So I was really afraid of that. But like just generally, like I don't know, bodies are weird. We're all meat puppets. So I was just like uncomfortable about things about my body. So one time I was at my friend's house for a sleepover, as 12-year-old girls do. And we were like drawing with chalk on the sidewalk, like Disney characters. We haven't been like just broken by the grips of misogyny yet, so we're just having a great time. And I, feel like I have to do my business. I go inside, and like her family's like gathered around the living room watching Family Feud, probably eating like plates of cheese and crackers. I don't know what families do. And they kind of look at me and make small talk, and I see that the door of the bathroom is next to the living room, and that they not only like, will they know that whatever happens in there is my doing, but they'll have to watch me leave. So I go in and I'm like, this is not gonna be eloquent and silent by any means. I knew my own strength at that point. So I'm like reading the soap opera magazines that they had like provided next to the toilet, and I decide that it's less embarrassing if they hear me singing in the bathroom than if they hear me like loudly pooping. So I go into an entire rendition of Don't Stop Believing with an added verse and chorus just because I was like, not done yet, I'll give him one more. And I was making eye contact with myself in the bathroom mirror the entire time, like, yep, that's the decision you're making, like belting, straight out, no smile, just deadpan. And it worked, like they didn't hear me, but I was never invited back to that friend's house ever again. So yeah, that was like my most embarrassing story for a really long time. That was what I would like take my friends into like a corner and be like, all right, this is my deepest, darkest secret, and and you're just gonna laugh at it. Until this summer, when something really embarrassing happened to me, but honestly, it's more like one of my worst fears. Like, my worst fear used to be the idea of bugs crawling up my vagina. Like, it just really scared me. Like, I would sleep with my knees locked just because I thought that would protect me for years. But then, like, as I got older, I just, like, I don't know, I've had worse things up there at that point. And people. But honestly, vaginas are pretty indestructible. So I got over it pretty quickly. But my current worst fear stemmed from me and my friend this summer. We were walking behind her house. There's like this like lake and like path, classic, like a little Disney looking landscape. Suburbia. And it was wet, so I borrowed her, and like the ground was muddy, so I borrowed her dad's size 14 Crocs, but I like put the safety straps on, so I was like, safe and ready to go. We're walking, and I feel something on the back of my foot, and I'm like, oh, like I must have stepped in a puddle, and I'm like, no, I stepped in poop. That's what happened. That's what I have done to myself. So I'm like walking, and I decide that I don't want to know, and I don't want to look, and I would rather just like walk and live in ignorance and then like kick it off and like never think about it again. So I don't look down. I'm really adamant about it for like 20 minutes of walking. And finally, like I feel something really weird. So I kick off the Croc in the middle, and it falls in the middle of the path. And a frog had shimmied its way under the safety strap into the shoe, and I had been stepping on it for the past 20 minutes without even knowing. And like, I don't know, I'd like to think in my life I've been pretty nice to animals. Like, I might have said once that like animals shouldn't be tested on. Like, I don't think I've done anything about it, but I probably said it and thought it because I'm a good person. And like, I just murdered this animal without even knowing, with my bare foot, just like strolling along, talking about like, I don't know, math, like what do people talk about? I'm like looking in horror at what I'd just done, and my friend like looks and she goes, "Oh, Nicole, you silly goose, got a leaf in your shoe." I'm like, no, that is no leaf. Look at its legs. And the legs were like fanned over the side, like I like just was like a big cartoon giant, and I crushed it. And my friend just looks at me and she goes, "Nicole, that shit was flat." And I was so traumatized by the fact that I just murdered this frog that I just kick off the other croc and I run off and I try not to think about it. And 3 months later, story does not end. We were walking along that same path, and like leaves were crusted over to show that time had passed. And I saw the croc, but the frog was gone. There was no like decrepit frog like skeleton, or like I don't know why I thought that would be there, but there were no like, it didn't look like an empty pirate ship. So I was like, maybe the frog lived, maybe it like reflated and then hopped off and like found like a frog wife and had a bunch of frog kids, and now it like tours frog colleges and gives like inspirational speeches about overcoming adversity that you can't control. And like maybe I started this like surge of frog empowerment. Now they all like carry signs and burn their bras. But like more realistically, some kind of like wild coyote or like bear, I don't know what eats frogs, I'm not really familiar with the food chain, came along and took it. But either way, that is my worst fear. Thank you so much.